I want people, everyone all over the world, to know that they are here for a purpose, for a reason, not by an accident, not by mistake, that they have meaning and extremely high value in this life. We all have gifts and talents and abilities, and they're all different. Thank God they're different.
Welcome to Flip Your Script, the podcast about life's critical turning points and how people find the inspiration and motivation to move forward and rewrite their unique stories. Produced by Media Minefield, the show is hosted by Kristi Piehl, who flipped her script from an Emmy-winning journalist to a successful entrepreneur and speaker.
This Flip Your Script story is one that will unfold more like a novel. There are twists and turns and next-level inspiration. I want to give you a little backstory. Before this podcast launched, I sent a few early episodes to friends for feedback. A friend of mine, Josh, listened, and he sent me a link to an HBO Real Sports story featuring an athlete, and he said, if there's one person you need on this podcast, it's her. I watched that story with my mouth hanging open. I clapped, I cried, I cheered, and that was just all in 2 minutes. We all need to know the Jen Bricker-Bauer story. She's an author, a speaker, and an athlete. She's an aerialist who toured and performed with Britney Spears. She's headlined from Dubai to Las Vegas, and she's a state champion tumbler. And Jen does all of that, and she does not have legs. Jen, welcome.
Hi, good to be here.
Thank you so much. I want to start at the beginning of your story because you were adopted. You knew you were adopted when you were born in Romania, and you were born without legs. And your parents said either, I don't know how to handle with this, and they adopted you to America. Tell me what you knew about that and what your parents who raised you told you about that.
Yeah, so I was actually born in the U.S. A lot of people think I was born in Romania. A lot of people do. But my biological family is from Romania. They moved to the States. Then I was born in the States and adopted in Illinois at 3 months old. So I was in a foster care home the first 3 months. Then my parents adopted me really against all odds. So my mom had 3 boys and then couldn't have kids anymore. But she always wanted a baby girl. And she always, like, deep inside her, she knew. It was like she just knew she was supposed to have 4 kids. And it really looked impossible for her, but she just believed it anyway, for 10 years, praying and believing and not giving up. And one day she heard about a baby girl born with no legs, and it was like light bulb moment, And they adopted me against all odds, and they told me from the beginning, like you said, I always knew I was adopted. I always knew my biological family was from Romania. And I always knew, they were very real with me. They said, they probably did give you up for adoption because you didn't have legs, probably. They're totally different mindset, growing up in communism. And it's also viewed very, very differently, not having legs. It's like, we can't as Americans really fully understand it, and still today in 2020, many, many places in the world view someone being born without legs as like a curse or a family curse, or you don't go into public, or, and that's the reality. So I think that's how they grew up. And so my parents just said, regardless of the why they gave you up just doesn't matter, because we prayed for you. You are supposed to be with us. This is where you're supposed to be. And I think because they had that conversation from the beginning, it allowed me this freedom to never carry this hate or anger, for my biological family. And they told me, you didn't walk in their shoes. You don't know what was going on in their lives. And at the time they gave you up. So don't hate them. Like, they really said these things from a very early age. And I think that's the game changer.
Because you knew you were wanted.
Yeah.
By your parents.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, as I got older, especially, I thought, man, if I were to complain about being adopted, I felt like that was a slap in the face to my parents. Like, to me, it didn't seem right, at all, because they gave me a great life and a great childhood, and I was loved. And so then why would I be focusing on the people who put me up for adoption and not even knowing their story, So to me, I just understood that I was where I was supposed to be.
So they raise you and really equip you and empower you with an I can do it mindset. I've read that you weren't allowed to say I can't.
Yeah.
How has just that little, not saying that little word, impacted your life?
Tremendously. I mean, it impacted it tremendously because as I got older, what I realized is that it wasn't just taking can't out of your vocabulary. Okay. You can say it as a sentence, right? But it really is a lifestyle. It's the way you live life. It's the way you look at challenges. So the thing everybody on the planet has in common, the one thing we all have in common is obstacles, right? So nobody gets a free pass out of that in life. And so the difference is just when we have a mountain in front of us, do we immediately say, oh my gosh, I'm intimidated, I can't do this, and then you run away from it? Or do we look at it and be like, man, this seems impossible. I really have no idea how, but I know that it's possible. Maybe I go around it, over it, or kind of chip away every single day and go through it, I mean, so that's just, I think just the simple fact of looking at it and knowing that it's possible. That's what taking can't out of the vocabulary, that's how it real time in real life, affects me and has affected my life practically, which is huge.
Huge. It's huge. And as a parent and watching people parent, so many parents have a mindset that they're going to fix everything and they're going to protect everything. And I see video of you as a little child with no legs on a trampoline going way over your brother's head. And your mom isn't standing there saying, oh my gosh, come down. I'm so scared for you. She let you kind of try some things. And that really allowed you to go into tumbling. And to watch you tumble without legs, I don't even understand how you got the idea that you should do it. Tell me that, like, as a little girl, you're like, yeah, I don't have legs, but whatever, I'll figure it out. How did that happen?
It was pretty much like that. Yeah. I mean, even if I did things that did scare my parents, they were very intentional about not wanting to discourage me, even if it freaked them out. Cause I was like a little adrenaline junkie, even when I was little, I loved it. I loved going high. I loved being, just doing all the fun stuff. I loved it. And my older brothers were definitely encouraging all of that. So that was also helpful. And with tumbling, with all the sports, so I did softball, basketball, volleyball, and power tumbling. And they were all against able-bodied athletes. Now, at the time, I wouldn't have even said that to you. I would have just been like, yeah, I'm playing sports. Of course it's with everybody else. What do you mean? Like I didn't even consider or think about being in a like Paralympic or a handicap sport or, whatever the right term is. But because, it really wasn't part of my identity, which sounds funny, but I viewed myself as like an athlete and talkative and a social butterfly. And that's kind of how everyone else identified me at school, at home. So not having legs was absolutely a part of me, but it was not the identity. And that, that's a huge difference. And so tumbling, I think I just came out an athlete, first of all. I love sports. I loved being outside. I loved climbing trees. I loved and I was always so strong. Like just genetically, I think I was very strong, regardless of legs or no legs. There was like this ability to gain muscle and keep muscle in a very unique way for a female. So just first of all, I had that, and then it was the strength that I got inside from my parents. There's always the confidence and the love and the self-esteem, and you can do anything. And they really meant that, by the way, because they proved it when I wanted to do all these things and they let me do them, with absolute freedom. So the tumbling was like, yeah, I watched gymnastics on TV and I was like, I love it. And I know I can do it. It was like, yeah, the balance beam, that might be like, I have to alter some things if I want to do full-blown gymnastics, which I grew up in such a small town that we didn't really have full-blown gymnastics close enough. So that's why I did power tumbling, which was really, really popular in the Midwest when I was growing up. And so that was something that I don't know how else to explain it. It was in me. Like I knew I could do it. And my mom went to the tumbling coach. And she is I have so much respect for her because tumbling coach Beth Allen, my mom went to her and told her I wanted to, start taking lessons. And she didn't say no. She didn't say, oh, I can't do this. I mean, she doesn't have legs. What are you talking about? No, she said, I can't make any promises. I've obviously never done this before. I've never coached somebody with no legs, but let's try. I mean, that's all anyone can ask for, right? And she coached me just like everybody else. She didn't give me any special treatment, and that was it. And then they saw I could do these things, like actually really good, and they invited me to start on the competition on the team. So that you have to be invited to actually be on the team to compete, to start going to meets. And that was a big deal. That's what everybody wanted. And yeah, and then it was 4 years all over the Midwest, and then even beyond the Midwest to the Junior Olympics. I won a state championship one year. I went to Junior Olympics in Virginia. The whole United States was there. I placed 4th in my division, and I was the first person ever with no legs to compete in AAU and USTA tumbling.
It's so incredible. And just for people who are listening that haven't watched the video, I encourage you, as soon as this conversation is over, go to the Flip Your Script podcast website and please watch the video because it's so impressive. And we're not talking about you did it with prosthetics or you did it without legs. And the watching you flip all the way around, was the center of gravity piece the hardest part for you? Like when you first started flipping over, to make sure that you landed solidly, because you really you don't have much wiggle room for mistake.
Right. No. You mean like sticking it? Is that what you mean?
Yes. Like how did you, when you flip over, clearly I'm not a gymnast. So you flip over and you have to land. You can't like wobble a little on your legs. Like,
right.
we see people on TV, you have to stick it every time or you fall on your face.
Yeah.
Was that in your mind ever, or were you so confident that, what, I can do it, they can do it, legs, whatever?
Oh, well, it wasn't like, oh, I'm afraid I can't try it. No, I did it, of course, but it was definitely I had to hone that skill big time because your legs, when you bend your knees, that absorbs it. That's what absorbs the bounce because you have a bounce. Obviously, when you are having that much momentum and you do especially multiple flips or back flips or whatever you're doing, you land with a lot of impact. And so you automatically go up and you have a bounce, right? And ideally sticking it is just landing and then boom, you don't move, right? That's the ideal. So I really had to hone that skill. Like, how do I do that? And so it was all core strength. I had to really control it with my core, really, really like extreme control over and over and over and over again to get that bounce basically eliminated. And I did it. I was like, but that's a good question that you asked. No one really ever asked that, but I talk about it in my book. So it's funny that because that was something I really did have to work on over and over again. And they probably would have like given me some sort of an exception, but the judges, but I never wanted that. That was like really, really important for me that if I won, I won fair and square. That was it.
So as you're growing up and you're watching gymnastics and you're watching the Olympics, you have someone that you're really looking up to. And this is where the twist that is so written from a novel that it's so unbelievable. It's almost like made up. I know it's not made up, but to tell everyone listening about the twist that you found in your life.
Yes. So when I was watching gymnastics and growing up, loving it, I related to one particular gymnast, Dominique Moceanu. She was part of the 96 Olympics and she was Team USA, but her blood was Romanian actually. And I knew that. So that was one thing. I was like, oh, she's Romanian. I'm Romanian. That's super cool. And then we looked alike. And so I thought that was really cool. I'm 7, 8 years old at the time. So just things that you relate to on a kid level. And so, yeah, I related to her. I liked her. I always was watching her and I felt like I saw a part of myself in her somehow. And then right before I turned 16, I was talking with my friend at the time who was also adopted. And somehow she found out what her biological last name would have been. I don't even know how that happened. And never up until that point was I curious about, I didn't need to know anything about my biological family. Like that need was just never there for me because my parents, like I said in the beginning, they were so open from the beginning that I felt like basically all the questions that I would have had were answered. And so I was like, good. But at that moment, out of nowhere, I just was like, huh, I wonder what my biological last name would have been, And I was like, I really, it was so fast like that. Went home, asked my mom if she knew anything about my biological family that I didn't know about, which is why I even asked her that is really a miracle. Because like I've, said now multiple times, they were so honest. There's nothing about there was no pattern of them keeping secrets or being like lies or anything like this. It wasn't like that. So I think it's pretty much a miracle that I even asked that question. So I did, not expecting it. Of course, I was like, yeah, she doesn't know what. Of course, she's not going to know anything. Then she says yes, and I'm like, what do you mean yes? You don't. There's not a yes. You don't know any. What are you talking about? You don't know about my biological family. That's impossible. How could you? You know what I mean? And then she said, well, you're never going to believe it, but your biological last name would have been Moceanu. And I immediately knew what that meant because it's not like it's common last name. And it was direct. I was like, oh, so that means Dominique Moceanu is my biological sister, the girl I watched growing up on TV, that I felt a connection to as a kid. What? Like, how does that happen? That, like you said, that doesn't seem real. It doesn't even seem possible. It's crazy,
Did your mom know the whole time and never said anything until you asked?
They knew when I was about 7 or 8 years old. They figured it out from me watching her on TV. And then there was a shot, I don't know if it was during the Olympics or before, I don't know. And they panned to the audience and they showed Dimitri and Camelia Moceanu, my biological parents. And some light bulb went off in my mom's head and she was like, man, those names, they sound so familiar. What? And she went and dug up the old adoption papers, which was supposed to be blacked out, by the way. It was supposed to be a closed adoption. So that's miracle number 527 in the story. And that really is a miracle, because without that, my mom would have never figured it out. She wouldn't have had the proof. Let's just say that. Then at the time I was young, my mom and dad both thought it was just, I was too young. And then not long after that, just that next year, Dominique had this public emancipation from her family. So then it was disaster in her life. My mom thought that, they thought it also wouldn't have been a good time for her. And then legally, I also wasn't supposed to know anything until I was 18. So they were going to tell me when I was 18, but if I asked, they weren't going to lie about it. So that's what happened. Yeah.
What a secret for them to hold. I have so much respect for your parents, for just the way they raised you, not the mindset and the knowing that you were wanted and pushing you and all these things, but they could have, really gotten in your head if they would have told you that information at the wrong time or too soon. They waited until either you were ready for it or you were the right age, all these things, but it's really respectable how they raised you and how they held that you would have been so excited had you known it early, wouldn't have been the right time for you. And they knew that. So it's just really impressive.
I agree. Actually, I'm not one for I would never agree that they should have kept the adoption a secret, that I would have never agreed to. But this one, I just think it was the right call. I really, really, it's not even a question. I was like, yeah, that was absolutely the right decision. I mean, because it was a big, big thing. Even when I found out, then it was a 4-year journey, to contact. I have another sister also, Christina, younger, and they grew up together. And, so it was a really big, it was a 4-year journey for me to contact them. It wasn't like a simple thing. And then after meeting, we met, all of us in 2008, we met. And then everything went public in 2012. That's kind of when everything, exploded just in the media and stuff. And then, but, it was really a journey. I really had to find my place in this new family. It was totally different from how I was raised, totally different. And yeah, so since then, it's just been a journey. And at the same year, the same exact timing, hand in hand, my professional acrobat and aerial career was happening. So it was like really, I had to be this like master balancer, and it was, almost too much, like almost overwhelming. And I can really handle a lot, I would say. But that was an intense time.
So you still have a relationship with your sisters, your biological sisters?
Yes.
And your parents who raised you are comfortable with that, and it's worked out well?
They were super excited for me to meet them. And when I met Camellia, my biological mother, because my biological father had passed. So when I met her, my parents were they made sure to tell her the day they met her that they held nothing against her. They have no hard feelings for her, against her, and that they made sure that I was raised that way also, to not hold some sort of grudge against her. So, and they brought baby pictures, and they, it was just it was all very, very peaceful, very good.
No regrets?
No, definitely no regrets. No, not at all.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. So in case people don't know what an aerialist is, so I think the most famous probably is Pink. Pink they're these silk strips, and they're hanging from the ceiling, and it's dancing in the air with cloth. I don't know, there's probably a better way to say it, but you became very famous doing this and toured with Britney Spears and have headlined yourself. How did you get into that?
Yeah, so I, had the background in tumbling and sports, and then took like 5 years off during high school and the year after, just to kind of be normal and have life. And then I moved to Orlando, Florida from Illinois to do this Disney college program. And then I ended up just never moving back. And I was working at Disney and saw all these performers. And I was like, I can do that. I just need somebody to teach me. And I want to do that. And I want to learn this. And I found a guy who had been an aerialist and an acrobat for 10 years. He was a former gymnast. And he started teaching me these things. And that turned into a partnership. And that we were training 5 days a week, hours and hours. I was bruised. I was purple. I was black and blue. I was so motivated and so on fire. And so we put together a trampoline act, like on a professional trampoline where you go like ridiculously high. And then an aerial act on the silks, both duo acts. And within the first year of my being in the entertainment industry, we got on the Britney Spears tour. I mean, it's really unbelievable. It was also against all odds that I even made it on that tour. And we were a featured act, we toured all over the world. We were in Madison Square Garden 3 times, Staples Center. Some audiences were 20,000 live. I mean, this is like your heart is out of your chest, there was so much pressure for me, especially because nobody wanted to hire me in the beginning. No one had ever seen somebody with no legs do this stuff. It had never been done. So people didn't know what to do with it. They didn't know how to handle it. They didn't know how audiences would react. There was no box that it fit in. There was no formula. There was no path. Nothing had ever been seen like that. So, of course, no, all the, closed doors. And then after we got on the highest grossing tour at that time in the world as a featured act, then you can imagine the doors blew wide open and everybody wanted me to perform. Then it became okay. So that changed everything for my career, basically. And the pressure was so intense. I mean, if I messed up, my career would have basically been over before it started. And the pressure was real. After I walked away from that tour, like I did 40 or more shows with her, I said, there will never be anything that intimidating again in my life. This was so extreme, so much pressure. And I walked away from that and I was like, I can do anything. Like, I can literally do anything now. For especially my career, really raised my confidence as a performer. And that was a very wild time. Like, I almost can't believe that was part of my life, but certainly was.
when I've seen Pink do it, her legs are so important. And that so much of the act is her hanging upside down and to the side and with her legs. So you had to not just figure out how to do it, but you couldn't follow anyone else's path because no one had done it your way. So you were doing something that had been done, but totally innovating and reinventing it at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, that was the biggest challenge, was all the experimenting, all the trial and error. I mean, it was, because you're exactly right. Every lock, every hold, it's basically all your legs, especially, and partner acts also. And so we really just, so much of the training was experimenting. How do we do this with no legs? How do we do this? How do we do that? How do we do this? And then it was, okay, now we started realizing that there were so many things that I could do actually that you couldn't do with legs. That started getting interesting. That started getting really fun. And that was really cool. And we discovered that I could hang upside down with no legs. And not only could I hang upside down, but I could pick up my partner who was 185, way heavier than me. So we discovered a lot. Yeah.
So you did something that professionally you thought maybe couldn't be done. And at that level of intensity and extreme situation, what's next for that part of your career?
Well, I just got married 1 year ago. And
congratulations.
Thank you. And my husband actually plays professional trombone, and he was a music teacher and then was playing, so kind of like teaching in music, and then would play gigs, of course, with orchestras or ensembles or all the different things. He's from Austria, so it's a very huge music kind of culture in the folk and brass instruments and opera. And so he also sings opera and does all these things. So we actually just had our first performance in Budapest in January this year. And it's a super unique, it's so exciting because it's very new and fresh. So basically I'm performing in the air and he's playing trombone at the same time simultaneously. And it's a duo in the sense that he's not just playing as my music, but there's a connection the entire time. And then at the very end, we physically connect and go up in the air together. And that we want to develop that far, like really, really develop it, like have a composer, get like everything totally new and probably double the length of the act. And so that's what's new for the performing aspect. And also we speak together. So it's just funny. We didn't know these things would be happening, but we found out once we got married that he was an amazing speaker and he has a passion for it. And we traveled all over the Philippines for about a month after we got married, speaking all over the Philippines with the company. It's kind of a honeymoon, more of a mission trip. And then the last year, we've been speaking all over Germany, Austria, performed in Hungary and Budapest. And that will be continuing, of course, in the US and developing more and more, which is really exciting. And then eventually getting a film made about my life, which has been a very long dream in the process of, not so much a dream as much as like it's supposed to happen to reach even more millions of people. It's just this deep knowing that it has to happen. So that drives my motivation,
And in thinking about the book, which I have here and is very inspiring, and a potential movie and the speaking and all of these things, when someone walks away from hearing your story, what's the one thing you want them to take away?
I want people, everyone all over the world, to know that they are here for a purpose, for a reason, not by an accident, not by mistake, that they have meaning and extremely high value in this life, and that we all have gifts and talents and abilities, and they're all different. Thank God they're different, actually, So the diversity is awesome, but a lot of people think that they're not important, their life isn't important, that they don't matter. And I totally disagree with that. I 100% know that everyone has equal value, not just value, but equal value, and equal value through the talents, the gifts, the abilities. These things are, maybe you're good as a speaker, a listener, math, a piano teacher, whatever. Every different passion and gift is going to reach a different group of people. And everyone has a platform and a stage because people, your family, your friends, your coworkers, this kind of thing, this is the platform, this is the stage. This is our opportunity that everyone has. Everyone has that to make an impact. And it, like, inspiring and motivating is not just for certain people in the world. It is for everybody. We all have that. And I believe we were all made for that.
There's so much fantastic wisdom in what you just said. I love it. I'm cheering for you. And so much of that comes from your deep Christian faith. How has that relationship changed your life and the direction and purpose of your life?
Well, it gave me purpose. So, I think everybody is always wanting to know what their purpose is in life. And for me, having a relationship with Jesus, praying daily, reading the Bible, really just asking him what I should do and following that, it takes the weight off. It gave true freedom to me, true freedom that the weight of the world is not on my shoulders, that it's not all on me, because I can't shoulder that weight. It's just, we just can't do that. We don't have that strength. I've got a lot of strength, but not that kind of strength. That is. And so seeing that there was purpose behind not having legs and knowing that, not just a maybe, not a, oh, that's a good way to cope with it, but knowing it, fully believing and knowing, because if I believe in God and believe that he doesn't make mistakes, then I believe and I know that being born without legs was not an accident. And this is like, then it changes the entire way that I would view the world. Totally, 100%. And it's given such freedom for me, like joy and freedom through the hard times, also through hard times, that knowing that also that it's not all about me. This is like, thank God, because this is, if you're only ever motivated by you and you and you and me, and that it's all about me, that's so not motivating. It's temporarily motivating for like seasons. Yeah, you can absolutely, you ride the high. I've had lots of highs, yeah, but it's totally temporary. It is not long lasting whatsoever. So knowing that what motivates me is knowing God's purpose, how he works through me for other people, that has longevity. That is what's kept me doing this for over 11 years, professionally, through being exhausted and traveling all over the place and never really, always kind of bouncing around and always gone. And I love that. But there's also a sacrifice that comes with that,
It's really the difference between happy and joy. Happy is a temporary feeling, and joy is a deeper, can be there in all times. And you found the difference between happy and joy, and that's part of, I suspect, is what you're sharing with other people and teaching other people, that there are hardships in all times, in all people's lives, in every year, and we're in a pandemic and a racial reckoning. There are stuff all the time, but to find the joy doesn't mean you're not upset or dealing with something or struggling, but there's a joy that's at all times different than happy. And so much of what we have in the world is this search for happy, which is fleeting.
You nailed it. Yeah, I really can't add much more, but that is exactly how I see it as well. I mean, there is a huge difference between happy and joy. And I honestly didn't fully understand that, I think, maybe until my mid to late 20s. I think that the real true understanding of that difference really came much later in life, because you're right. Everything and everyone around us promotes and pushes and brainwashes happiness. And it's that life is all about you being happy. And that is so dangerous and damaging. It makes me angry because I fell into that trap for a while too. And it's damaging because you always have expectations that are never going to happen. And that is not also, it's not also what we're made to. Life is not all about us being happy. Happiness comes and joy. Don't get me wrong. I have had some of the most incredible, beautiful, once in a lifetime experiences. And that is, we should absolutely have those and have those to the fullest. I'm all about that. Love traveling the world, love experiencing new things. I love that. But it is not a selfish thing that it's just my life needs to be all catered around me being happy at all times, 24/7. This is a very dangerous agenda that people push. And I'm speaking about it passionately because it affected me, and so I try through example and through just sharing organically and naturally about my life. I try to be the example by living it consistently, not just pointing a finger or telling you I have it all figured out. It's just because I don't, but just sharing about what I have learned, and passing that along.
And you do put your life on display, and you do intentionally share things for the purpose of helping other people, showing other people, letting people in, because this is part of your bigger purpose. And you just hit 100,000 followers on Instagram, and you're social media famous. Is that hard to do, to balance I want to have a private life, but I believe that it's important to share? How do you navigate that, especially you're a newlywed?
Yeah, I think I'm very used to it at this point, and I really enjoy meeting new people, and I enjoy all the messages that I get and people reaching out, and so there's kind of a naturalness for me. I've also been doing this for many, many, many years, basically my whole life. Filming started when I was younger. It didn't just happen as an adult. People don't realize that sometimes, but and I think for my husband, he's pretty cool about it. He was never on social media before we got married, which is probably a good thing, actually. And now he's posting more, and he's really using it also as a way to share his life and his faith and his testimony and our story. So I think it's just, we kind of both know that's part of what we're supposed to do. And so there's a bit of a normalness to it, or an ease. Yeah.
And it gives you a platform and an ability for your story to reach people, even when you can't travel in the times we're in right now, and you can't be in big groups and in front of large stadiums.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Which I totally miss, but yes, gives it
Someday.
Much more. Yes. Yeah.
Final question, something that I ask everyone at the end of the podcast: is there a book or a music passage or scripture that has motivated you in those difficult times?
Yeah, many, of course. The one that is just sort of, title of my book and everything. It's so Everything is Possible is the title of the book, but it came from Mark 9:23. Everything is possible for the one who believes. And believe, to me, is the key. So, like I said, everyone has the ability to change lives, is made to motivate, made to inspire, but none of that will happen if they themselves don't believe that is possible. And no one can do that for someone else. So it's got a personal thing that we all have to do. So that's just it's got to be that. It's got to be everything is possible for the one who believes. Underline, bold, all of it. Believe is such it's the key. It's the key.
Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
In listening to Jen, there are so many different things that we can take away from that, but we are all here for a purpose. There is no obstacle too big. And at one point she talked about clawing your way through it. Doesn't mean it's easy, doesn't mean it's fast, but there's always a way through. And it's a mindset. I love thinking about I can as not words, but as a mindset, a way to live, and living with this joy and a peace that you have a purpose and you're on this planet. And whether that's to motivate or to touch thousands of people or two people or the one person in your home or the person you pass on the street, everybody has a purpose, and that it's worth doing the work to figure out what that is. My hope is that Jen's stories empowers you to believe you're capable of more than you think, to discover motivation, to uncover inspiration, and to find the strength to turn the page.
Thank you for listening to Flip Your Script, hosted by Kristi Piehl and produced by Media Minefield. If you like our message, please be sure to give us a 5-star rating and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also check out flipyourscriptpodcast.com for pictures, resources mentioned in the show, and information about our other great episodes.